welcome back, everyone. I have a special guest from the school community today. I got Hunter Gore from South Carolina. So, welcome, Hunter.
Mark, thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be talking with you and your audience.
Yeah, I'm hoping this helps. Help you get your setup going so that when you get on Zuber's channel, it'll look even better. But so, why don't you tell my
Yeah,
audience a little
absolutely.
bit about your kind of background in real estate or why you started in real estate and what your portfolio looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been investing in real estate about 3.5 years. I've been a real estate agent. Next month will be 6 years. Really, my experience in the investment world came through the agent side of the business. Um, but funny enough, even before that, the reason I got my real estate license had a investor who was, probably 20, 30 years older than me, had a lot of experience. I was a, very young kid on the block, so to speak. And he really recommended, hey, why don't you get your real estate license? You can use it to, essentially make commissions, roll the commission into investment properties and make cash flow and build wealth. And for a 18, 19-year-old kid, I was like, hey, this, sounds pretty great. So that's what I did, and it's been a roller coaster ever since.
So, would you say from the beginning of your journey, though, the plan was to be like an investor, or were you kind of sold on the agent side of making money?
Hmm. Yeah, it was really from the beginning geared toward investment properties. I knew I wanted to be on the ownership side. I grew up fairly middle class. Dad had a good job, made enough money, mom could take care of us, while we were growing up. Um, but as I watched my parents tackle finances and challenges that come in life, I realized that um, we didn't, and I didn't really know a whole lot about money. Um, at least, in the sense that, we're sort of talking about it today. Like I remember looking at houses in high school, driving down the road, and I thought, man, those would be nice to live in one day. Never thinking, oh, you can rent these out and you can make money. So it was really a mindset and paradigm shift, going from high school up into my early years in college. Really just fundamentally changing my mindset around money and wealth, and then learning the real estate investing on top of that.
So, remind me again, how old are you right now?
So I'm 25.
So, you're 25, I'm 48, and I probably have that same kind of story where didn't know a lot about money. You kind of just have this mindset, oh, that's a beautiful house there. I want to live in that one day, but not thinking about it as it can generate income and all these things. So as you can see, there's a big age gap between us, but there's a lot of people in between there that have probably gone down that same path of not understanding money. And I see that as a big problem out there. That's kind of what my channel is about. And I'm sure that's what you're trying to do, on the investor side is help people get financially aware of their situation, how to build wealth. So right now you're an agent with EXP, right? Um,
Correct.
so I,
EXP.
yeah. So as an agent, I mean, I believe I listened to one of your episodes with Renee on Forever Landlords. So go check him out. He has a super good channel. But I think in the beginning you were doing like door knocking, or you started some. Were you at Clemson, I believe, and you started this kind of
I
business? And
was.
yeah.
Yeah, I ended up creating a really unique business model. Partnered with another older agent at the time. He's about 15 years older than me and had been an agent since he
Whoa,
was
whoa,
essentially
whoa,
out
whoa!
of
Did
school.
you just call him old? Like so I'm no, I'm 40, I'm old, but you just kind of insulted me on my no, I'm just playing. Okay,
No,
go ahead, go
no.
ahead.
Well,
Sorry for interrupting.
um, no, all good. So I can't remember if he had the idea or I did, or we mutually came up with it. But between the two of us, we decided, hey, I'm getting my real estate license. Why don't I, use the commissions, to pay down student loan debt and invest in property? Because those were the, two things I was looking at. One I wanted to do, the other thing I was going to be saddled with. So, why not sort of marry the two? And then we decided, well, hey, why don't we go get other college students involved in this? We can help them get licensed so they have something they can do once they graduate. They can hit the ground running as an agent if they wanted, or they can just get exposure into the real estate industry through sales. And so really the whole sort of mantra of our little business, little real estate team we were creating was to help students crush student loan debt through real estate sales. And it was a great pitch. We could pitch it to buyers and sellers. It was probably more effective with the sellers because they typically have the equity. And when you're listing a property, it's not rocket science. Generally, you're not doing a ton of work to get the property on the market. Um, we always used to say that most agents would do the three P's of real estate, where they would essentially put a sign in the yard, put it on the MLS, and then pray that somebody else sells it. And most agents do that. I've done it before on stuff. When I was just learning. So everybody's probably done it at some point, and um, that's really what most people do. But we wanted to have a little bit of a different approach, so we sort of added a fourth P to that, and said that we would essentially be prospecting to find buyers for our listings. And so really what that meant was we would go door to door in a neighborhood. So let's say, the neighborhood has 100 homes in it. We're going to go leave a flyer or talk with every homeowner we can. Let them know that we have another listing in their neighborhood. Who do they know that wants to move in? Um, and then we also ended up doing a lot of cold calling. Same sort of thing. If we couldn't reach them in person, we called them on the phone. So but through that, we were able to build a little book of business there and make some money as college students, and helped me and others, put money toward college and student loans.
Are you still doing that today? Is that model still part of your business plan right now?
Unfortunately, it's not. We ended up sort of disbanding the team and the business model. I found out pretty quickly and early on that it was very difficult to manage college students, especially because they're obviously their main focus is school and getting a education. It's not necessarily making money. Maybe one of them wanted to work full time hours, another one wanted to work 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week, and uh, so needless to say, it was a little bit more management intensive than a 20, 21 year old needed. So I just decided, hey, I can go sell homes by myself. I don't necessarily need to be running a whole business. I've helped other people. I've launched them in different ways, and I'll sort of launch my career in a different direction. So
Oh, I love that. I mean, it's a great model. Like you said, it just so happened, yeah, college kids are a little bit maybe have their own challenges to deal with at the time, right?
they do. I mean, a mix of, partying on the weekends and, trying to come back at it and sell real estate on Monday is not always the best best
Partying,
combination, but
partying all week, not partying on the weekends, if I can remember that far back. But so I always talk about my son's mom. She is from the North Carolina area, and so I love that area. We always go down to South Carolina, Greenville. So I love Greenville. So is that like the only place you invest because it's such an awesome place to be?
Greenville really is a fantastic place. I love it. Been here 4 years now, I guess. But it's a fantastic town. One of the fastest growing in the U.S., especially going back to 2020. All these people moving here from COVID, realizing that they can work anywhere. So a lot of remote workers. Anyway, but I could talk on and on about how great Greenville is. But no, we actually invest out of state. We also have some properties here in town. But part of my philosophy, when I got into the investment stuff, was I wanted to find good deals. Location was not as big a issue for me. And when I talk location, I mean, I don't care if it's in, Jacksonville, North Carolina, or Indianapolis, Indiana. Like, as long as it's in a good area for wherever it's located, it did not have to be 20 minutes down the road from me. So um, it took a little bit of learning and education on the different markets to get comfortable enough to invest. And actually, funny enough, I think almost every property that we own out of state, I've never actually visited to this day. So, you don't have to. Obviously, in some circumstances, it could help, but you really don't have to visit them.
So let's stay right here because I think that's probably the biggest fear for a lot of people that are contemplating investing remotely. or out of state. So currently, what markets are you in, and how would you say you determined they were good markets?
Yeah, great question. So obviously, we have some properties local to us in the Greenville MSA. We have one property up in North Carolina, closer to the Virginia border on the coastline. Have one property out in Iowa, and then we have another one in the Dayton, Ohio area. Um, the ones up in North Carolina and Iowa sort of came by happenstance, just being connected with other investors and wholesalers in the industry. They brought some good deals with some seller financing terms that I couldn't pass up. So part of what I look to buy on is seller financing. That's sort of a key cornerstone of the business model now. If I can't buy on seller financing, like Zuber always says, I like to make disrespectful offers. So I'm going to make an offer, cash, so to speak. It's going to be less, typically less than what is listed out or what they want for it. So
So, like, let's touch on because I off camera I was talking about how I almost bought a few things or bought something in South Carolina, Greenville, and like you say, it sounds amazing. You're saying it's a great market. So why do you not want to invest more there?
yeah, so one of the biggest disadvantages that South Carolina has is the increase in tax rate when you buy a non-owner occupied, or in other words, investment property. And it doesn't matter if it's land. Well, land can technically be its own tax, so I'll leave that out. But let's say you buy a single family house for 100,000. If you have a 6% tax rate, I don't know exactly what that dollar amount is, but it's typically going to be higher than most other states or areas. And that goes the same for, small apartments. It goes the same for commercial, office, industrial. Any sort of property is going to have that higher tax rate. So you can obviously make the deal work. You've just got to know that ahead of time. So, but that was one of the driving factors for me to consider other markets. So my first property that I bought out of state was actually up outside of Dayton, Ohio. Um, I traveled with somebody else to go look at a property they were going to be purchasing up in Toledo. So we flew from Greenville up to Toledo, and then we were flying back uh, out of Columbus when we left on that trip. So we essentially drove backcountry, well, interstate, but we were driving from Toledo down to Columbus. So I got to sort of see two markets, decent sized markets in Ohio, and I really just got to studying. I realized that the rent to square foot or rent to bedroom ratio was very similar to what it is here in South Carolina. So in other words, let's say you have a 2 bed, 1 bath apartment here in Greenville. That'll go for about anywhere from 900 to 1150. Let's call it. Well, up in Ohio, depending upon your market, obviously, it can go anywhere from 700, 800 up to maybe $1,000, even higher. So I was like, okay, that's very interesting. It's a very similar rent comparatively. Then I looked at the prices for the properties. You could go buy a duplex for, 50 to $75,000 a unit, versus here you start out 100 to 150 a unit, if not even up to 175 a unit, just depending upon what you're looking for. And I'm very much stereotyping some of this. So, somebody may look at a deal and say, oh, well, hey, I found, something for cheaper or whatnot. But, generally speaking, if you're looking at an older, anywhere from 70s to a late 90s, maybe early 2000s build, between both locations, that's sort of the different price points you can, you know, typically find stuff in. And sometimes that's on market, sometimes it's off market. So I said, okay, if rents are the same, and it's much cheaper to buy up there. What about taxes? That was my next thought. So come to find out, taxes are very reasonable up there. I'm trying to think for our property, our duplex up there. I think taxes run about, I'm going to ballpark 2,000 a year, 1,800 a year. So, same property in South Carolina would be running close to 5,000-6,000 a year in taxes. So it's like, okay, well, I've got cheaper taxes, similar rents, and cheaper property. Why shouldn't I go buy, in this general area? So that's what I did.
Yeah, I think before all, the insurance issues and rising insurance costs, I think property taxes was the one thing that a lot of people would overlook when looking at deals or deciding on what market they were going to invest in. So you have properties in your own backyard, you have properties out of state. Do you self-manage or do you use property management?
Yeah, great question. So for the stuff that's local to us, we do self-manage. Just makes more sense. So um, we can obviously save some money. We're not having to pay a property manager. From a management perspective, we have enough technology on the back end and back office support to help us, maintain what we do have here. For the stuff that's out of state, I have elected to hire a property manager. I, probably just as easily could also manage those remotely. I've been talking with Renee about that. He would obviously say, "Hey, go all in. Fire your property manager, manage it. From 1,000 miles away." And hey, I'm sure I could probably do that. But for the time being, at least up in the Dayton area, I'm going to be keeping that property manager. They do well. So it it's really a cost that I don't mind paying for.
Yeah, I think so I invest in Pittsburgh, about 6,000 miles away from Hawaii. So initially, I did have a property management company or using property management. I have transitioned to where I am kind of hybrid, maybe self-managing, somewhat using a property manager for like 5 properties. So the rest of them are still under that one property management. About 5 of them I took to kind of see if I can self-manage at a distance, but also kind of incorporate like a property management company for like the maintenance and whatnot.
Hmm.
But the biggest reason I wanted to try it is for, well, a couple of reasons. One was proof of concept. So my audience, I can tell them, hey, these are the challenges that I've had trying to do it remotely. But one big thing was, what if my property manager decided to move out of state or quit or decide to take up a new career, and then now I'm scrambling to figure out how my properties are going to be managed. So that's part of the reason why I want to kind of put it on my plate and just get an idea of what I'd have to deal with, what systems I would need. So kind of doing it now, while I do have a good property manager there, I can always turn back to using him. But I did kind of want to get some kind of proof of concept if something was to happen. Like, can I do this, or how can I transition between property managers and whatnot? So,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's you learn a lot. I definitely think everyone should kind of try it to some extent because I think it helps you really learn a lot about your properties also. Because a lot of times there was things that I didn't really know. Like my property manager would tell me something, and I, just kind of, oh, we need to get this fixed or maintained. But then when you kind of start self-managing it a little bit, you get better knowledge of what might be going on there, or what this yard may actually look like, or where this tree actually sits on the property. So I think it's good for everyone
Yeah,
to get a little bit of experience in it. But yeah,
it is.
Renee's
Yeah.
definitely probably trying to switch you. I know.
Well, it's funny. I might be pulling the trigger on at least one property out of state. This was the newest acquisition, and in a market that we weren't already established in. So have a property management company handling stuff for us. But so it's a 4 unit. We've had two people move out. Um, one by eviction, one by just into their leases up, they move out, and both of those were, I think, April and then May, or no, I'm sorry, March and April, and both units are still unrented. One's flipped and turned, the other one's not even turned yet, and I'm like, okay, well, how difficult is it to slap some paint on the walls? And it's like I've lost, years worth of cash flow because, somebody was taking their sweet time on leasing out my property, and it's unfortunate. The worst thing I can do is say, hey, you're fired, and they probably don't care one way or the other, so they're managing hundreds or maybe thousands of units. They don't care about four little things, so it is tough, but It's
Okay, so
anyway. So
so now let's kind of, stick with the out of state thing, doing it remotely.
sure.
What would you say is the biggest challenge for anyone that wanted to invest out of state, or where would they start?
Yeah, that's definitely a really great question. I think the biggest thing that you have to overcome as an investor, if you're looking out of state, is to get over the hurdle that you have to know, touch, and feel everything. Um, it can definitely help in some situations, but I've bought a number of properties sight unseen. I've bought um, probably six or seven, maybe eight things sight unseen. Single family land, small apartments. Now, obviously, I'm going to get things like an inspection report, and I'm going to have somebody else putting eyes on it. It's not like I'm just totally going in blind. But I personally don't have to put eyes on it. I don't have to touch it. I don't have to feel it. So I think if somebody can get over that hurdle and understand, hey, somebody else can go take a look at this for me. I don't have to do everything myself, and it teaches you how to delegate, right? Because that's really what property management is to a large extent, is delegation. How do I delegate the maintenance to my repair guy, to my handyman, to my plumber, my electrician? How do I, handle some of these things? And I'm not an electrician. I'm not a plumber. I'm not going out to my properties to do repairs now. Some things maybe, but I'm generally speaking, we're not going out to do all these things. We're hiring other people, we're delegating, we're communicating, we're sort of being a conduit for information and resources, really.
Yeah, totally agree. I think the biggest thing people got to realize is it's not, you're not saying no one is seeing your property. You're saying you yourself may not actually get to see it in person, touch it, feel it, but there's, like you're saying, there's an appraiser, there's insurance people, title
Hmm.
company, the lender, other people are getting eyes on this property for you, right? So you have to have also, maybe you have boots on the ground, which is also very important in that certain market. So how did you vet like your boots on the ground? How did you connect with people in those markets?
Yeah, great question. So the short answer is yes. Vet everybody. Vet handyman. Property managers. All that. For property managers specifically, I have a list. It's probably a page and a half of just different questions to ask your property manager. Things like, how long have they been managing? How many units do they manage? What do they, what does that portfolio look like? Is it Class A multifamily? Is it Class C? Is it war zone properties? Is it, HOAs and condominiums? That's a different management style than somebody who's managing a Class C, apartment. Is it nice single family houses? Is it trailer parks? um, it's all things that you need to be asking them. So once you've gone through and you've vetted to make sure that your property manager is knowledgeable, skillful, they meet all the requirements, then I typically do a couple things. I will connect with somebody who's local in that market, typically an investor. I'll try to reach out maybe through a Facebook group, or in this case we have school, so we can connect with other people through that. And I'll find somebody who I can talk to who knows the market. Maybe they're local or they've been investing there for a while, and they can tell me things they like and things they don't like. Um, I'll use Toledo, Ohio, as an example. Don't own anything up there yet, but I went up there 2, 3 years ago on a trip to go visit a property. Buddy was looking at buying, and so we were looking through that property, trying to get a better understanding. And we had to sit down with the property manager. We were looking at hiring for that property. It was a larger 30 unit complex, so definitely a little bit more hands on. But we got the inside scoop. That property manager was also an investor, owned a lot of units themselves. So they got to give us the rundown on, hey, this is a good contractor. Stay away from these properties in this area. This other property management company, they don't do repairs well. We've had to come behind them and fix a lot of issues. Just things like that you wouldn't normally get. So, in that case, that was actually a property manager, but you can get that same information from a local investor in your market.
Great information. And you kind of mentioned, the school community, vetting contractors. So what's your take on like networking or putting yourself out there or getting in these groups?
So networking is vital, really vital to the real estate investment business. You don't have to always network, but it is very helpful to at least, at a bare minimum, network enough to build a foundation, a team, whatever you want to call it, a group of people that you could call if you needed something. So for me, locally, that's okay. I need my tradespeople. I need a handyman. I need my insurance guy. I need, an attorney, all these different components. And then past that, I don't really have to go network to go find a new, handyman or a new insurance guy. It's like I have somebody who I'll use and until they quit or, tell me they don't want to work together, I don't have to go put in the work to network and build another team. But with that being said, networking is always, 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 always helpful to continue to build networks with other people that you don't know. And it puts you into different rooms with different people that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's the one big thing you have to realize is, and even for a lot of people, and we see it in the school community, there's actually people in there that don't have any properties yet. And I think that's super huge that they're putting themselves in these rooms, putting themselves out there. Because I know a lot of people that are like, oh, I don't have a property and I don't want to go to these things. I'm embarrassed or I don't want to ask these questions because I don't have anything. And it's like, no, and people, I mean, I don't know if you feel the same way, but when I go to these real estate things, I feel like everyone is just there talking story, wanting to share what they're doing, get information. Oh, one market, but that's a cool market. I'd love to be okay. But everyone is trying to help everyone. So do you see that
Mhm.
also?
Yeah, I do. I don't think there's too many investors that really want to see somebody else fail. I mean, at least I haven't run into them yet. There's so much real estate. Like even if you take Greenville as a market, for example, I mean, I probably know a couple hundred investors, a couple hundred different agents, maybe, 10, 20, 30 different wholesalers. And, we might all in some instances be chasing after a certain property, but there's so much real estate, even in just Greenville, to keep everybody fed and happy. It's about helping others, and I do think what goes around comes around. So, if you want to go help other people, you want to help them find a deal, help somebody get started, you'll see that later on. It might not be, directly, financially related, but you will see that later on.
Yeah, I love that. So let's say, do you think if someone lives in a market that, maybe like you're saying, for whatever reason, South Carolina has higher property taxes, so it could be a little more challenging. Do you think everyone should always look to invest out of state just because the numbers would work? Or like for me, I really feel like everyone has to know themselves. Like out of state
Mhm.
investing is not for everyone. So what's your take on
It's
that? If the
not.
numbers work, you should just go for
Yeah, I mean it's a really tough question to answer because I do think everyone's situation is different. Everybody's going to have a different set of skills, different set of resources, different set of experiences to help them make a decision. I know for me in my stage of life, what I wanted to do, investing out of state seemed to make sense. Part of that was I found some deals where the numbers clearly worked, and I said, okay, I don't own anything in this market yet, but everything seems to be checked off the list in a positive way. So, what's going to hold me back? That it's not in my backyard. So for me, I took the leap, and it's been great. But I would say that it's going to be very important to build a network and build a team if you do want to do it, and make sure that you do become very educated on your market. Zuber always talks about a buy box, but I think beyond a buy box, like part of my buy box is okay. I'm looking for 2 to 4 units, in Dayton. I'm looking for 5+ units in Dayton surrounding. It's got to meet all these certain parameters, right? But I also need to know, hey, this is my contact, this, nuance about these types of properties in this neighborhood in Dayton, or, hey, if you're going to buy a 4 unit property that's, one bed, one bath, it's going to have, a master water meter. And so, you need to look to see, are there sub meters, or, who's paying all these utilities? Because that's another thing we haven't even talked about was utilities with properties. Like here, landlord never pays for utilities. Very rare, unless it's a short-term rental or mid-term rental. But up in Ohio, and Dayton in particular, a landlord almost always pays for water, generally speaking, and potentially gas, depending upon the property. So it's like, okay, now I have to go factor in for paying a water bill into my underwriting. So it's just different things that you have to be aware of inside the market. So I think if you do want to invest out of state, build your team, build your buy box, and then become a master of your market.
I love that. I think that's all great information. And just kind of touching on, maybe what you touched on earlier too, like, you're not gonna, for you yourself personally, and this is how I feel too, like, I'm not gonna go to the property and fix things for certain, and that's just not me. And for some people, that's why they can invest out of state. For others, it's like maybe they're very handy, or they're gonna do a lot. They have to do it themselves, and they cannot let other people do it. So, like I said, you really got to understand yourself, your skill set, and out of state investing. No matter how great the numbers may be, it is not for everyone. But the thing is, and we touched on too, is like there's a lot of ways to do things in real estate to where you can make the numbers maybe work in your area. Maybe you have to put a bigger down payment, you got a house hack, but you're also taking advantage of some other things in real estate with your license, being an investor. So is there something that's also benefiting you from a tax side in real estate?
Yeah, so this is not something that is generally taught as like, hey, this is a vehicle for the investment side. But as an agent, and lots of people can qualify if they are in real estate full time. But I actually qualify for real estate professional status. It's just essentially a checkbox on a form when you file your taxes, or your CPA files it, that just essentially says, hey, Hunter is working in real estate full time. As a entrepreneur, as somebody who is adding value to humanity, or to America. And because of that, I actually get special tax incentives. I don't want to call it a tax break because that's not true, but I get special tax incentives if I choose to use it. And really, what real estate professional status does is it breaks down a barrier between your passive income or losses and your active income or losses. And what it does is it allows you to carry passive losses over against active income. So, what constitutes a passive loss? That is probably going to be in your rental properties. If you own property, let's say I bought something in December of last year, and I got 1 month's worth of income, but I had a $5,000 bill for a water heater. Okay, great. So, let's say my income was $1,000, my expenses were 5,000, so I netted negative $4,000. Well, what I can do is I can take that and I can write that off against active income. And then there's another caveat to this as well. And this is really what a lot of investors who do larger scale multifamily utilize. But they utilize cost segregation studies to increase the depreciation in the first year of use for rental properties. Could be anything from single family, mobile home parks, commercial, warehouse, office. You could do it across lots of different property types. But it basically takes out the land value of your property and looks at the physical building itself and the fixtures, personal property that might be inside of it. And it will take the normal depreciation schedule, either 27 and a half or 39 years, depending upon property type, and it will condense that down into a five, I think it's a 7.5 and a 15-year time frame. Might have the time frames a little off, but it essentially condenses a large portion of the property instead of spreading it out evenly, it's going to push it all up into the first year. So you can typically take a pretty large deduction on a property. Let's say, for example, it's $1 million property, and I'll preface with I'm not a CPA, I'm not a cost segregation person. This is just my own personal experience and typically how it works. Um, if you have $1 million property, let's say that the land is worth 100,000, so it's really 900,000 that you're depreciating. Well, if you paid $1 million for it, you generally can write off somewhere between 30 and 40% of that. Sometimes 25, again, just depending upon land. But let's say between 25 and 40%. So you can have a write-off between 250 and $400,000 that you get to write off against your active income. So depending upon your tax bracket, that can really impact the actual dollar for dollar savings that you might get. But generally speaking, most people aren't going to make 400,000 or more in a tax year. So they can take that depreciation and offset it against their income, potentially pay no federal income tax. And you can also spread it out over future years. But again, talk to a CPA, they're going to know details. This is just very high level of my personal experience with it.
Yeah, there's so many tools once you start doing it that get brought to you, and then you just figure out which ones can work for your situation. But I love what you're
Absolutely.
doing. But I do kind of got to wrap things up. I got a live
Yeah,
jump on
absolutely.
with Renee. I'm going to call Renee out pretty soon. Um, but yeah, I know we talked about it. So quickly, maybe just real quick, what is your goals for your portfolio? Are you looking to be a huge investor? You want 1,000 units, or what are you looking at?
I definitely don't want that many headaches, but no, I'm probably looking to 4x my current portfolio, maybe a little bit more. But I think if I could, quadruple what we have here, that would be great. It's about 10 units, so ideally, if I could get to 40, that seems like a pretty stable number. But could fluctuate. But I'm probably not one of the people that wants to go buy 500, 1,000 units. This seems like a lot of work.
Cool. I love it. So hopefully, I get to see you in Vegas for one of the ORAD events soon. I will see you in the school
Absolutely.
community. But where can anyone find you right now? Are you on social media?
Yeah. So if anyone wants to find me, I'm obviously in school in the One Rental at a Time group. You can find me on Twitter or X. I still call it Twitter. It's just force of habit. But my username is the Hunter Gore. So give me a follow, shoot me a message. Would love to connect.
All right, man. This was a lot of fun. I'll let you know when to come out and we'll do it again, man.
Absolutely, Mark. Thanks so much. Appreciate
All
it.
right.